Some of the most damaging relationships are the hardest ones to explain, and they don't have to look extreme in order to be deeply harmful. Welcome to the Covert Narcissism podcast, where we make sense of what never quite made sense. If you've been listening for a while, you may already understand what's happening in your relationship. You can see the patterns, you can name the behaviors, but maybe you still feel stuck in the same cycle. This is where coaching comes in. It's not about learning more, it's about having the support to finally apply what you already know and begin moving forward. You need a coach. If you're ready for that next step, I invite you to join me in my coaching program. You can learn more about it at covertnarcissism.com. In today's episode, we're talking about something that so many people experience in covert narcissistic relationships, but often struggle to put into words. And that is the moment that something finally clicks. That moment when the confusion starts to clear, when the patterns begin to make sense, and when you realize that what you've been living in may not be what you thought it was. If you've ever found yourself going back and forth between I see it clearly and maybe I'm wrong, or wondering why it took so long to recognize the signs of covert narcissistic abuse, you're not alone. Those moments of clarity rarely happen all at once. More often, they build slowly over time until maybe there's that one that pushes you out the door or over the edge. This is through repeated experiences, small realizations, and a growing awareness that something just isn't right. In this community chat, I'm joined by Jenny, who shares her experience of what that click moment looked like for her after more than 4 decades in her marriage. We talk about the gradual awakening, the internal conflict, the emotional impact, and what it feels like when clarity finally outweighs the doubt. If you're in that space right now, questioning, noticing, or starting to see things differently, this conversation may help you feel a little less alone and a little more grounded in what you're experiencing. All right, today I would like to welcome Jenny to the show. And Jenny, this is our next community chat. We had another lady that was going to join us, but there ended up being a conflict there and getting that to happen. So, Jenny, but thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
It's good. It's been a good Sunday, restful. So
Good. Good. Glad to hear it. I don't know about where you are. We've got beautiful spring weather here.
yeah, this has been one of the most beautiful days of the whole year so far. So really nice.
Good. Glad to hear it and glad you're able to enjoy it. So, Jenny, do you listen to the podcast? Is that how you found out about covert narcissism?
I found out about covert narcissism not by listening to, well, not initially from the podcast, but from a group member of a small group of women that I have attended for about 6, 7 years. And one of the members was very familiar with narcissism, and she introduced me to the term, which I had never heard. And then I found your podcast. I don't remember how I found it, but it's been about 5 years I've been listening. So it's been quite
Oh,
some time.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for being, a part of the group there. I hate it for everybody who understands what I'm talking about. So I do hate that. Was this an in-person group or an online group?
We meet once in person a month and 3 times on Zoom the other weeks.
Okay,
So we
that's
are in
awesome that you
person.
have an
Everybody is.
in-person group.
Yeah, most people are local. There's one person from Brooklyn, New York, who's always remote, but generally it's supposed to be in person once a month.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So when you found out about narcissism or when this person mentioned narcissism, was it just like a light bulb that went off, or was that click moment sudden, or was it more gradual?
It took me some time to accept that these behaviors were really part of his character, if you want to call it that. I refused to believe that it couldn't change. I couldn't believe that I could really understand that this was really narcissism. I didn't want to believe it.
Mhm.
And she kept dripping on me, this gal that was in my group, and she said, "You have to know your enemy. you have to
Wow.
you have to know what's going on." And I read that myth, that Greek myth about narcissists, and it just started to dawn on me, and she kept dripping on me, and I listened to your podcast, and I read a couple books, and it just really started to sink in over it was a few years, really, that
Yeah.
that it really took hold until I was
Wow.
really willing to accept that this was some behaviors that had been detrimental to me for many years.
Wow. Was this a long-term marriage?
Yeah. Um, 45 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's more than double the length of mine.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine. Okay. And so this is 45 years into the marriage that you started to get your eyes open to this?
About 42 or so into the marriage, maybe
Wow.
41, because I've been going to this group for about 6 years. So,
Okay.
um, yeah, but I stayed in the marriage until 2024.
Okay. And when you got the words and you started maybe the words jumped off the page at you. I know I experienced that where they like slapped me in the face because they rang so true when I started reading them. But when you finally started to get some words to this, did that change how you felt about it? Like how did that feel inside of you?
You know what happened was I started to be able to see the red flags. And I heard a word in I'm not sure where it was. Maybe you mentioned it about gray rocking and being able to cut the conversation short by not responding, not reacting, and just being silent or saying, I can't talk about that. And I won't talk about that, setting some really good boundaries. And
Mhm.
that that really helped a lot. And
Yeah.
it wasn't the kind of it wasn't it wasn't outwardly abusive. It was more manipulative type of actions.
Yeah, which just makes it so hard to see.
Mhm.
I mean, you go deep into marriages like this. When the words, when I finally got the language to it, it was both incredibly relieving, but at the same time, absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, I guess I would say that it was a there were moments of when I saw things that I had never seen before. There was definitely um, a time when it became absolutely clear to me that I could go on no longer, and that
Mm,
I basically had lost. I call it my soul was stolen. I felt like my soul was stolen
absolutely.
because I was willing to give and give and give and give in many domains, and never felt seen. Well, I wouldn't say never, but being seen, being appreciated for being me was something and I get teary about it today because I wish for that.
Yeah. Did you ever feel like at that point in your marriage, did you feel like he even saw you or knew you or knew who you were for you?
No, because the things that I was interested in, I would, I started playing the piano again after my mother passed away. There never was an instance when he came and said, Play something for me. I'd like to hear you play." Or I would be reading something and hand him an article and something that I thought was funny. I have a strange sense of humor. And it would get passed back with no, real comment. I just felt like what I was interested in was not what he was interested in. And, he would give me books for Christmas. I didn't want books.
Were they books you wanted?
He thought I should
Sometimes you
read
get
them.
that.
He thought I should read them.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
even to the point where this where counseling was, you need to change, you need to go to counseling, you need to ask these questions, you need to focus on these things, and when you come back, we're going to discuss it. And I asked my counselor, is this my counseling or is this his counseling? And she said, you don't have to tell him a thing. But it was so hard because I was always the one that had to change.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you find yourself going back and forth between I see it clearly and maybe I'm wrong?
Yeah. Until the one moment in 2024 when there was just no question. I think I had gotten to the point. Can I tell a little bit about that story?
Absolutely. We'd love
Okay.
to hear it.
Um, it was interesting because we went to a memorial service down south to support my son, and he's our quietest boy. He's 30, he's in his late 30s. But he picked us up from the airport, and the first thing that happened was my husband said, my ex-husband, whatever you call him, I don't know how to call that person. I don't like the word ex-husband. But
I
he said,
understand that.
"How are you doing?" And my son said, "It's really tough. This has been a tough time for my wife," and on and on. And apparently the husband didn't have a will. So he says, "I can help you with that." And my son said, "No, I don't want help. I want you to listen to how you asked how I was. And that's what I'm telling you." And that was the first. And I said, "Whoa." My son finally spoke up for himself because he's a quiet man and doesn't often speak up for himself. But the real kicker was we went to a concert. I was driving back in the rain and I wiped the windshield with my hand. And he said, What are you doing that for? You're not supposed to wipe the windshield with your hand." I said, "Well, I can see. I'm driving." And so we continued on, and he said it again during the trip. And uh, he said, "I have a headache, and but I said, "I'm driving. I'll get you back there." And then my son from the back seat said, "Can you guys stop arguing, bickering?" And it just shut me down. And so when we got home, he said, "You need to go upstairs and apologize to our son." And I said, "I'll go up there for me and I'll apologize to him." So I went up and started talking to him. Then I came back downstairs and he had his phone out. He said, "See, I looked it up online. It says don't wipe the windshield with your hand." And I felt like and then the kicker was, he said, "Didn't you learn that when you were 16 and took driver's ed?"
Oh, wow.
And I felt like a child being scolded by an angry parent. And I said, I'm done. I'm not listening to this. I'm going upstairs. I'm going to bed." And I didn't talk to him for a week. And then the next week I went to my group and they said, "What are you doing?" And I left. But that moment, that song, "I Can See Clearly Now the Rain Is Gone," that's my theme song.
I love it.
Windshield wipers. And I said, "I can see clearly." It was so clear to me that I could not stay any longer.
Yeah.
We went on December 9th, we came home, and on Thursday, I left.
Wow. So right then, that quick. Okay.
It
So
was so
that was a
I was
moment of
so
real
ready.
clarity for you.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
before that, I wavered for a lot of years. I wavered for and as long I was in that support group, I wavered. And they kept saying, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" But I was loyal and I stuck by him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard. That is not an easy thing to walk away from. For me, it was a 21-year marriage and kids and I was dedicated and I was invested and we had built a family together and I was in this for life. I can only imagine at 40, at that point 42, whatever years and up to 45, I cannot even comprehend the difficulty it would have been to walk away.
Yeah, and I think, the promises were always there, were, entrepreneurial spirit that he had. I'm going to make the money. And he did on occasion. It was a roller coaster ride. And it was always like, there's always a way to get it done. I'll get it done. But meanwhile, I was supporting financially and I got completely depleted. And so
Mm.
this decision to leave was, I can't do that. I am dying.
Yeah.
My
Yeah,
spirit
that
was
goes back
just
to my
gone.
vampire episodes where they
Yeah,
they suck the soul right out of
yeah,
you.
I listened to those. Yeah.
Yeah. Where was the point at which you decided so that day with the windshield wipers, that's when you left. Had you already decided you were going to leave? You were just looking for the right time? Or was
Nope.
that the day you decided you were leaving?
That's the day I decided that I had to do something for me. And then when I went to my group that Wednesday, they said, "What are you doing?" And I cried and cried after that group. And I called my best friend from high school who lives in the area. She says, "Pack your bags. You're coming to my house." And I wrote a
Wow.
note and I left.
Okay. Have you ever looked back or was that a
No,
good decision in your life?
I have never looked back. And I believe that there's divine providence in all this. I I I had a friend from high school who was willing to have me live with her for 6 months, and I took time to get
Mhm.
to be with someone who would support me until I could figure out the next move.
Good. So when you walk away from that long of a marriage in a situation where he's, parenting you, this parent-child dynamic is common in the narcissistic, especially covert narcissism.
Mm.
Was it scary to try to do life on your own?
It's interesting because there had been another time when I was ready to leave because of, uh, substance abuse. And I actually had no means, no financial means. I was home with the kids, but I was ready to go unless he got some help, and he did get help. This time, I have financial resources. I work, I have my own business, and I knew that I could survive fine on my own. And I had no need to have this person in my life. And it
Wow.
felt absolutely fine to leave.
Wow.
I had no reservations.
Good. Was your family around you supportive? Your, I assume at this point, adult children, I don't know how many kids you have. Were they supportive?
I have 3 children, and they all were extremely supportive. And because of what happened, there was a big blow up in the business that he was running, and they were so angry about that. And they were angry that my resources financially had been used to support the business. They were angry that my time had been used to support the business without being paid. And they were just they were enraged.
Mm,
And
okay.
that's some healing is going on with one of those relationships. Um, my daughter hasn't spoken to him in over a year.
Wow. I mean, it impacts the kids. It absolutely impacts the kids.
Well, what they said was, we knew, which doesn't surprise me in the least, we knew for years. We could see things in your relationship that we knew that he was not treating you well. But if we said anything, it would throw you under the bus because
Mm,
the blame would get focused on you. So we never felt like we could say anything. Now, my youngest son, he's no longer with us. That's my fourth child, is the one that spoke up a couple times. And he had no problem speaking up. But it came on deaf ears because there was always some response,
mhm.
that didn't he didn't want to take in the constructive criticism or whatever you might call it.
Right. So they always have a reason. They always have an answer, or they always have, well, that's not the truth this time, or
I mean,
there's
it
always an excuse.
it came down to cutting onions at a holiday dinner. I was cutting the onions. I was chopping the onions. Do it this way. My son says, "Can't you just let her cut the onions? They're all going to go in there anyway and get fried up." It's like
Wow.
the
No, it's
silliest things.
amazing in these relationships that are like what you're speaking of when they're so parenting of their partner, their spouse. It's amazing we were able to do anything without their great expertise and their great, how did you ever manage life before you met this person is how it kind of feels when you're in that relationship.
Well, when we first got together, I put him on a pedestal. He's 4 years older. I thought he knew so much more than I did. He was starting a business at 25 years old. I just thought he was the guy, and he was. Had big dreams, big visions, passion, wrote me poems, you know, work hard, play hard kind of, look at life. And he was going places. And I said, I'm going to go with this. This is great.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. And were some of the years good years? I
Mhm.
mean,
Mm.
and for 45 years, I'm going to assume there were some good times too.
We did lots of good things. There were a number of good years. We lived overseas for a year and a half. That was an incredible experience. There were lots of good years. I was always the follower.
Yeah.
I was always the one who did what I needed to do, took care of the house when he was traveling, took care of all the issues in the house. I did a lot, way beyond what I
Mhm.
think I should have done while he was out making money, and he had issues with addiction. So that
Okay.
was
I'm
not good.
sorry to hear that. The good years that we do have with these marriages, I mean, for you, did it add to the confusion? I know it did for me.
When by the time I was ready to go, I said, there'll be a time when I can reflect back on these good years and I can talk about this with my kids. And maybe I'll be able to come back and say, accept that, yes, there were good years. I mean, I can tell that in my head, but emotionally, the 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 negative part has really been present for me because it really took a lot of years of learning about this character behavior, learning about addiction, and growing myself to the point where
Mhm.
I was good enough for me to go.
Mhm.
That took a lot of years.
Wow. So, how has your relationship with yourself changed now?
I feel like I'm enjoying making my own decisions. I'm enjoying that the things I want to do, I can do without strings attached, with someone watching over me.
You can cut the
Um,
onions now.
I can cut the onions however I want.
Right. And the onions is one little piece, but it's one little piece of hundreds of things.
Yeah. And what, for me, it's I was never a big I never considered myself a big dreamer, like dreams and goals. And there was always a push. What are your goals? What are your dreams? Because he always had big dreams, big goals. And I just never thought about that. I just kind of did life as it came along. And that's what he called floating down the stream. If you're going to float down the stream, you're not going to get anywhere. You know, but now that I'm out of the relationship, I've, I'm at a place where kind of inventing a new me because I've got to develop my own goals and I have to back to some of my passions that I've loved that I haven't done, you know.
Good for
So
you.
it's an adventure. I look at it like an adventure.
Good for you. And are you finding is it like you're finding you again?
I am. I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I joined a choir. I haven't sung in choir since high school. Um, I'm going on a trip this summer that I wouldn't have ever done. So
Mhm.
yes, I'm finding me. Mhm.
Good. Do you trust yourself differently now?
You know what I trust? I trust that when I decide something, it's not going to get disputed by somebody else's overpowering opinion of what should be the decision. So if I make an unwise decision, it's all on me. But it,
Mhm.
but in the least, I'm not having to to defend a decision that I'm making.
Yeah. You're allowed to make decisions that later you might go, "Okay, I could have made a better decision there." But it's
Yeah.
okay. You're not having to defend everything or justify everything or doubt everything.
And not be guided by someone else's opinion about or directive about what I should do because if you do that, that happens. So don't do that, even though that's what I wanted to do.
Mm.
A lot of it, even some of it came through in owning my own business because I had my own ideas about how to run it. And he had better ideas.
Always.
Mhm.
Always. Narcissists always have better ideas.
Yeah.
Narcissistic people always have better ideas. They think.
Yeah. Like I wanted to have
Mm.
the group of ladies that worked with me come and meet once a month. So why are you meeting once a month during the day? You could be making money during the day. Why don't you meet another time? I said, because they have kids. They're not going to be able to meet at nighttime. Just things like that, that just,
Mhm.
really,
Constant
and
nitpicking
I
of
and I gave
everything.
in. I gave in.
Mhm. Yeah, it's constant nitpicking of everything you do, like they have to find something at fault, something wrong with what you're doing.
It felt like I never knew enough to be confident.
Yeah. Okay. So, what would you say today to somebody out there listening who maybe's been in that long term marriage? Okay. I can't speak to that, not that long term of a marriage, but they're listening to this podcast and maybe they're in that middle of, I see it clearly, but maybe I'm wrong, or I need to leave, but I don't know if I can do this on my own. What would you say to them?
Find your good support people first. Find people that you find groups. You don't have to be in person. Find a group where people, women in the group, can support you in learning more about your situation, and listen to podcasts. Listen to your podcast, Renee. Your podcast has helped me so much, and I have shared them many times with friends and my
Mhm.
sisters and my kids. Um, Become educated and recognize that you are worth it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm very honored to have been a part of your journey, even though I did not know that I was. But I'm very touched by that. And I thank you for sharing that. Every time I hear from somebody that my story has helped them, that my podcast has helped them, every single person that this story is able to reach and help makes my story make a little bit more sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
When we're affirmed by other people who have gone through similar things or who are going through a similar thing, it's the people who have been there that really have the ability to speak into my life. And I got good counsel from
Good.
friends and counselors.
Good. I'm really glad to hear that. Jenny, thank you so much for sharing your story on here and for sharing it with this audience because I know there will be people out there who resonate with the words that you're saying.
Thank you. I feel honored to be on this podcast. It's I never would have imagined that I would be doing this.
Me either, to be honest. I never thought I would be doing this, and I've got over 400 episodes now, but I did
Right.
not see this coming way back, before. So, all right. Well, Jenny, thank you so much.
Thank you.
As you heard in this conversation, the moment that something finally clicks is rarely just one moment. It's often the result of years of confusion, self doubt, trying to make sense out of something that never quite made sense, until that actual moment when clarity comes. It doesn't always make things easier right away. It can actually make things feel more complicated before they begin to settle. What stood out to me in Jenny's story is not just her moment of clarity, but the years leading up to it, and the strength that it took to finally trust what she was seeing and to act on it. If you are listening to this and you're somewhere in that process, whether things are just starting to feel off or you're already seeing things pretty clearly, give yourself permission to move at your own pace. Clarity does not require immediate action. Sometimes it just asks you to sit with it, to acknowledge it, and to begin trusting yourself a little more than you did before. And if hearing conversations like this feels helpful to you, I want to invite you to be a part of it. I have more CNG community chats coming, and I would truly love to have you join us. You can sign up for future chats through my website at covertnarcissism.com. These conversations are a space to share, to be heard, and to realize that you're not alone in what you've experienced. Jenny, thank you again for sharing your story. And to everyone listening, your experience matters, even if you're still trying to make sense out of it. I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. If you've been listening for a while, you may already understand what's happening in your relationship. You can see the patterns, you can name the behaviors, but maybe you still feel stuck in the same cycle. This is where coaching comes in. It's not about learning more, it's about having the support to finally apply what you already know and begin to move forward. If you're ready for that next step, I invite you to join me in my coaching program. You can learn more about it at covertnarcissism.com. Your story matters, and you deserve to be heard without judgment. Check out my coaching services at my website, again, covertnarcissism.com. And don't forget to subscribe, to thumbs up, to follow, to like this podcast so that you can get more empowering episodes like this one and to help us continue spreading the word so that our community can continue to grow. I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. The information provided by Renee Swanson, Covert Narcissism Podcast, and CNG Life Coaching is for educational purposes only and is not to be used for diagnosis purposes and not intended to be a substitute for clinical care. Please consult a healthcare provider for guidance specific to your case. This material discusses narcissism in general. Renee shares stories from her personal experience as well as from those she has talked with for several years. Her material does not claim that any specific person has narcissism and should not be used to refer to any specific person as having narcissism. Permission is not granted to link to or repost this material to support any allegation or support a claim that any specific person is a narcissist. That would be an unauthorized misuse of this material and information provided.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.